Hey, this is Taylor with the top 25 keyboard shortcuts for Microsoft PowerPoint that save you the most time when building and editing your slides. And to get this list, I surveyed over 30,000 professionals asking them what their favorite keyboard shortcuts were, as well as clicked through hundreds of different commands and shortcuts and actually time myself to figure out which shortcuts actually save the most time when building and editing your slides in the program. And I'm not talking about the normal copy, paste, save, undo, etc. keyboard shortcuts, all right? These keyboard shortcuts dig a little bit deeper, and it's keyboard shortcuts like this that is the fastest way that I know of to double your productivity in the program, which is why spending just a few extra minutes to learn your keyboard shortcuts like Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V, which are super useful, and I'll show you how to use those later in this video, or setting up the $1 million keyboard shortcut, which I'll show you at the end of this video, which doesn't even take a few minutes, can save you hours of heartache and frustration when building and editing your slides in PowerPoint. And to make things easier for you, I've included a free PDF cheat sheet of these top 25 shortcuts in the description box below this video, as well as additional links to PowerPoint resources to help get you to happy hour. Top shortcut number 1, the hidden Slide Master Jump shortcut. The hidden Slide Master Jump shortcut is Shift plus the normal icon that you can find at the bottom of your PowerPoint screen. Now, normally when you click the normal icon, first you'll get your notes, then you'll get your outline view, and then you'll get your normal view back with the thumbnails, and I'll show you some tricks for working with the notes pane later in this video. But watch what happens when I hold a Shift and then click the normal icon. Holding Shift and then clicking the normal icon, I will jump to the child slide layout. I'm now on my Slide Master. You can see the Slide Master tab open up here, and a little shortcut within a shortcut. If I hold Shift and hit the normal icon again, I'm going to move from my child slide to the parent slide. Now, understanding the difference between what you should do here on your parent slide versus what you should do differently here on your child slide is beyond the scope of this video, but if you're interested in learning more about that, I recommend checking out Camille's How to Build a PowerPoint Template here on YouTube. But just as a quick example of how much time this can save you, if I come back to the normal view, let's say that this is my company logo or some design element that I want to add. I'm going to Control X to cut it, and I want to add it to all of the slides in my presentation. Here I have 19 slides, but what if I had 50 or 100? All I need to do is holding Shift, jump to the Slide Master view. This is the child slide layout. I'll Control V to paste that logo, icon, or design element here on the child slide layout. And again, make sure you check out Camille's video to understand when you would want to put it on your parent slide instead. But if I close the Slide Master view, you're going to see that that design element was added to each of my individual slides, and it's not editable here. Just keep in mind that whatever layout you start on, when you hold Shift and click the normal icon to do that Slide Master jump, is the slide layout, or the child slide layout, in this case, the divider slide, that you're first going to jump to. Top shortcut number 2, the Align and Copy shortcut. The Align and Copy Control-Shift-Drag keyboard shortcut was one of the top-ranked keyboard shortcuts for professionals who responded to my survey, simply because you can select a column of information, and in just a couple of heartbeats, Control-Shift-Drag to the right, create a new column, Control-Shift-Drag. There's a third column of information that you can just edit. And notice that those orange lines and arrows on my screen, those are my smart guides. If you don't see your smart guides, just right-click on your screen, Grids and Guides, and make sure you have a checkbox here to display smart guides when shapes are aligned. So this is significantly faster, Control-Shift-Drag, than the normal, right? Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, which does create a copy of your column, but then you have to manually move it somewhere on your slide. And you can also obviously do groups of objects. Let's say I want to create this double column layout. There's the double column, there's a third column, and now all I have to do is add or update the people and their titles. Just a quick note, when working with charts with this Control-Shift-Drag shortcut, sometimes it doesn't work right off the bat. So what I recommend doing is just moving your chart, then holding the Control and Shift key to create that perfectly aligned copy, which you can then right-click, edit your chart, or use some of the other charting shortcuts I'll show you later in this video. But again, if you receive this slide and want to create a duplicate in just a couple of heartbeats, Control-Shift-Drag, you can create that copy, edit your data, and that's how it's going to save you a ton of time. Top shortcut number 3, the Duplicate shortcut, which is a hidden shortcut within a shortcut. Right off the bat, the Control-D to duplicate shortcut is twice as fast as your normal Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste. Instead, simply hit Control-D to create the duplicate copies of your objects, but the shortcut within a shortcut here, and why this saves you so much time, is if you select an object, Control D to duplicate it. If you then move that object somewhere on your slide, every time you Control D to duplicate again, PowerPoint will move the new object the same distance in the same direction as your last manual movement. You can even go diagonals down your slide like that. So this saves you a ton of time as you start to knock out your layouts, Control D to duplicate, and you start to fill in your slide layouts that you then can fill in your text. And a great example of that is here on slide number 2. I have a layout of some people, their companies, and a company description. Instead of trying to insert a bunch of text boxes and do this myself, I can Control D to duplicate. I will move the new duplicate copy down, use my smart guides, Control D, D, D. All right, that saves me from having to build each one of these manually. I'll do it again, Control D to duplicate, use my smart guides right about there. And you can see just how much time this Control Duplicate shortcut will save you. Top shortcut number 4, the Eyedropper shortcut, which allows you to eyedrop anything on your computer screen. In PowerPoint 2016, Microsoft added an eyedropper command, which also has a cool hidden shortcut associated with it. First off, if you select a shape, the way the eyedropper command works, Drawing Tools Format tab, Shape Fill. Let's say that I'm pitching Microsoft, all right, I can get anything here in the normal view, and I want to pick up this Microsoft green. I select Microsoft green, and that shape fill automatically becomes the green. But the shortcut is if you click and drag, you can actually get anything that's here on your computer screen. For example, if I come to Shape Fill, Eyedropper, let's say I want to get that PowerPoint red at the top of my ribbon. I click with my mouse and I then drag to the top and I immediately get that Microsoft or PowerPoint red. And where this saves you a bunch of time is if you're pitching a new client or trying to get someone's colors, let's say I'm pitching the Microsoft Surface team, I can quickly, all right, Shape Fill, Eyedropper, click and drag over here into a web browser. You can click and drag into an Office program. You can click and drag absolutely into anything. I'll do one more. Let's say I want this Microsoft Surface black to make sure I'm using the correct black, all right, to quickly fill in or get the colors for my corporate client, which will save you a ton of time when working in PowerPoint. Top shortcut number 5 and number 6, the group and ungroup shortcuts, and there's a lot of things in PowerPoint you might have never thought that you could ungroup before. Your grouping and ungrouping shortcuts are Control G to group and Control Shift G to ungroup, and we'll look at some oddball things you can ungroup here in just a second. First off, this is my slide layout, and as it's just an ungrouped set of objects, it's very easy for someone to accidentally come in here and move my line, shapes, text boxes around. So what you can do to save a bunch of time, you build your graphic, you Control G to group the individual elements that you know you always want to be part of the same column, or if this is one single graphic, Control G to group the whole graphic so someone, if they move it around, all right, they're not going to accidentally mess up where it is, which is typically pretty easy to do. And if you've ever had to do this where someone's accidentally, moved a bunch of stuff around, this can take you forever to do. So just Control G to group things together, Control Shift G again to ungroup down to the individual objects. Now, a couple cool things you might not have realized you can ungroup here in PowerPoint 2016. Your icons are now totally ungroupable. So the people, anything where there's multiple objects here, I'll use this keyboard. I'll insert those onto my slide. They'll start small. I'll group them together to resize them as a group. Another useful feature of the group command, Control Shift G to ungroup. I'll distribute them horizontally, and I'll show you how to do that later in this video. Now, right off the bat, why this is important and saves you time, if I come to the Graphics Tools Format tab, Graphics Fill, let's say I want the guy in the middle to only be red. Well, how am I going to do that if everybody changes red when I try to format the graphic? Well, if you Control Shift G once, Control Shift G a second time, notice that all of these break out into PowerPoint shapes. So editable PowerPoint shapes that you can then fill. Let's say I want them to be gray with a dark gray outline, all right? Same thing for all of these objects. Control Shift G once. Yes, Control Shift G a second time allows you to move, format, align, position, do whatever you want with these different icon pieces to build the slides that you're looking for. And one other cool place that you can ungroup things, if you've never seen this before, if you take a bunch of pictures, all right? You come up to the Drawing Tools Format tab, Picture Layout, you can actually force those pictures all into a Smart Art graphic, which if I just Control Shift drag to the right, my other shortcut, just to show you how badass this is, you can format or crop or size position all of those photos, Control Shift G once, twice, and you can then pull out the standardized photos to use however you want in your presentation without having to waste a bunch of time manually cropping them yourself. And to see a few other cool smart art ungrouping tricks like this, check out my 4 things you didn't know about PowerPoint video in the upper right-hand corner. Top shortcut number 7, the new slide shortcut. As you're building and editing your presentation, you're constantly, from the Home tab, going to be adding new slides to your presentation, which is why the Control-M keyboard shortcut will save you so much time. So for example, if I'm typing Microsoft and I want a new slide, Control-M will automatically add a slide layout based on the layout I was just on. And the shortcut within a shortcut here is when you first use the Control-M keyboard shortcut, you will always start in the title slide. For example, if I come back in, I'm typing Microsoft, Control-M, I can type my title, number 2, Control-M, title, number 3. So it's a fast way to fill in your presentation. And again, whatever slide layout you're on, here I'm on a divider slide. If I'm active here in the normal view and I hit Control-M, I'm going to jump to a new slide, and my divider slide title is going to be ready to be filled in. The only time this doesn't work, just a quick heads up, if you're on the title slide and you hit Control-M, you will never get a duplicate title slide. If you're on your title slide, you'll always get, if I come up to my slide layouts, you'll always get the second slide here in your layout dropdown, which is based on how your slide master is set up. Top shortcuts number 8 and number 9, your Start Slideshow shortcuts. For slideshow shortcuts, you have F5 and my personal favorite, Shift F5. So Shift F5 allows you to see whatever slide you're working on. If I hit Shift F5 in full screen presentation mode, allowing you to spot check your logos, your numbers, see exactly what your audience is going to see on screen in this full screen demo. When you're done, just hit Escape to come back to the normal view. You can make some edits and just pop back and forth, Shift F5 and Escape. And probably one of the most frequently used shortcuts I use as I'm building my slides, I just Shift F5, continue to spot check what I'm building to make sure that it's correct. And the way that you can use these two shortcuts in combination is F5 will just start your presentation from the beginning. You can start to practice. Here's my title, here's my divider slide. Start to dive into your content. And again, if you see something you need to stop as you're practicing your presentation, which is one of the keys to giving a great presentation, again, you just come in, hit Escape, make your edits, and then to continue practicing, you just hit Shift F5 to pick up exactly where you left off. And just a quick combination, if you throw the Alt key in with either the F5, so Alt F5 or Alt Shift F5, that's going to open up what is called Presenter's View, which is a great bird's eye view of your presentation. So if I come back to the normal view, I hit Alt Shift F5, I will launch Presenter View from the slide that I was just working on. So this is what my audience will see, which is just the normal slide. You'll see your timings, you'll see the next slide you're going to work on, and you'll see whatever notes you have. So this is, again, a great bird's eye view and a little bonus keyboard combination you can use with your F5 and Shift F5 slideshow shortcuts to unlock additional ways you can spot check and practice your presentations. Top shortcuts number 10 and number 11, the Format Painter shortcuts. The Format Painter shortcuts are really the pick up styles and apply styles keyboard shortcuts. And if I just hit Shift F5, if you already know your Control C to copy and your Control V to paste, all you need to do is throw in the Shift key to pick up this massive time-saving shortcut. And what this allows you to do is come into a presentation. Let's say you want to reuse this red. You just hit Control-Shift-C. Will pick up the color of that rectangle. You can then select other rectangles or shapes and Control-Shift-V to paste it. And why this is better than the normal Format Painter is once I pick up that green formatting, Control-Shift-V to paste, I can do anything else in my presentation. I can click around, I can edit text, whatever, and I'll still keep this green formatting. I'll just Control-Shift-V to apply it there. And I'm going to keep that green formatting until I go and pick up a new color. I'll select the blue, Control-Shift-C to copy, and Control-Shift-V to paste. So it's allowing you to very quickly pick up formatting from one part of your presentation, carry it with you, and apply it to other parts of your presentation, saving yourself a ton of time and making sure your presentations are sharp, clean, and consistent. Top shortcut number 12, the Selection Pane shortcut. The selection pane shortcuts are Alt plus F10. So Alt F10 once will open up the selection pane, Alt F10 a second time will close it out. And the way the selection pane, Alt F10, saves you a bunch of time is it allows you to analyze what's on your slide. And you can open up groups, you can hide things with the eyeball icon. You're just making sense out of what you have on your slide. You can click in, rename things, you can change the layering by clicking and dragging around. So it's basically giving you a bird's eye view of your presentation, which in this case is a fairly complicated slide, which if I hit Shift F5, you can see is actually trigger animations hooked up to these shapes that I've named in the selection pane. If you want to learn how to create a voting block using the selection pane like this, just check out my other video here on YouTube. Another way that the selection pane is useful, let's say that I want to format all of these individual icons, but I don't want to format the background rectangle. Notice if I just come to the Drawing Tools Format tab, let's say that I want to make them red. Notice that I lose the icons because they're being filled red with the background rectangle. Well, if I open up the selection pane, Alt F10, you can see that I can select, all right, the rectangle and all of the icons. And you can see them selected, highlighted here in this like salmon color in the selection pane. There's the rectangle I don't want to format, so holding Control, I'll unselect the rectangle, which then allows me to graphics, just fill those icons red, and I'm good to go. So that's how the selection pane is going to save you a ton of time by giving you a bird's eye view of your slides and allowing you to drill into the individual pieces. Top shortcuts number 13 and number 14, the bring forward and send backwards keyboard shortcuts. A set of keyboard shortcuts that not a lot of people realize exist are the Control-Shift back bracket and Control-Shift forward bracket keyboard shortcuts, which you can use to quickly manage the layers of the objects on your slide. If I hit Alt F10 to open up my selection pane, notice here with rectangle 7 selected, as I hit Control-Shift forward bracket, it walks up the layering of my slide, thereby blocking out everything else beneath it. So whatever is at the top of your selection pane is the most recent things added to your slide. Using this Control-Shift back bracket keyboard shortcut, you can quickly manage where that layering is. I'll hit Alt F10 to close out of the selection pane. And a great example of where you need to be careful of this is, let's say I want to create a box to box up or frame these keyboard shortcuts that we'll talk about in just a second. Well, I can Control-Shift drag to create a new copy of that box, which then blocks them out. I can then Control-Shift back bracket to quickly walk the object back directly from my keyboard to make sure I'm not covering up the shortcuts that I actually want to present during my presentation. Top shortcut number 15, the animation painter shortcut. If you work with lots of animations in PowerPoint, here's a keyboard shortcut, Animations tab, Animations pane, that's going to save you a ton of time, and that is Alt-Shift-C. So here, for example, I have a set of animations applied to this blue block, and I want to apply those same sets of animations and appear and disappear animation to the red block. Well, instead of having to come to the Animations pane, add the animation, and then select the Add to animation to set up a sequence of animations, instead, I can simply Alt-Shift-C, will turn my mouse cursor into a paintbrush. I can just click another object to have all of those animations added to the object. And I can click this one too, the logo, to apply those same animations. Once I have those animations set, I can simply come into the animations pane, so the US red, and I'm going to, from the trigger drop down, select to fire those based on when I click the Eastern region. So that, if I Shift F5, right here is the blue region, appear and disappear. Here is that red region, appear and disappear, all using the animation painter shortcut. And again, if you want to learn how to create a voting block like this, check out my other video here on YouTube. Top shortcut number 16, the draw straight line shortcut. One thing you don't want to end up with in PowerPoint is a bunch of crooked lines in your layout. And if I hit Shift F5 for slideshow mode, notice that these lines here on the right are crooked in comparison to these perfectly straight lines on the left. Crooked, crooked, and you're going to see a lot of this as people freestyle draw their lines or other objects onto their slide. And the way to avoid that and save a bunch of time from having to go back and fix those is from the Insert tab, open up the Shapes drop down. As you draw your line onto your slide, instead of just freestyle drawing and eyeballing it like this, which is what most people do, hold the Shift key. So holding the Shift key will draw a perfectly horizontal, diagonal, or vertical line in any direction you want. All right, you don't even have to think about it because it just automatically draws that straight line, which again is going to save you from having to fix it later on. And the same thing works if I come to the Insert tab, Shape drop down. For any of the other shapes, like a rectangle, you could freestyle draw a rectangle on, but if you just hold the Shift key, you're gonna get a perfect height and width to draw a perfect rectangle right from the bat, which is gonna save you a ton of time from fixing all of the crooked lines and non-proportional shapes. Top shortcuts number 17 and number 18, the increase and decrease font size shortcuts. One thing you'll constantly be doing as you build and edit your slides in PowerPoint is changing the font size to see what works best for your given chart, table, shape, or etc. And although you don't want to use too many different font styles and font sizes, the Control-Shift-Right and Control-Shift-Left caret keyboard shortcuts will let you do that super fast and save you a bunch of time, especially if you're on some other tab like the Slide Sorter tab and you quickly want to just increase the font size by 2 clicks. You just Control-Shift-Right caret once, twice will increase the font size. You could also decrease the font size directly from your keyboard without having to navigate back to the Home tab and come and using this font drop down. So this is a keyboard shortcut I use all the time, and it also works in Microsoft Word as well. So PowerPoint and Word, you can use the Control-Shift-Left caret keyboard shortcuts. You can also use this Control-Right bracket, Control-Left bracket. PowerPoint got rid of this for a little bit of time, but it seems to be back. But if you're going to learn a keyboard shortcut for this, I recommend the Control-Shift-Right and Control-Shift-Left carets, because not only does it work in PowerPoint and Word, it also works in other software programs too. Top shortcut number 19, the Format Chart Elements shortcut. Charts are the most complicated object class across the entire Microsoft Office suite because they can have the most moving pieces: totals, data labels, series, error bars, axes. Here I even have hidden series, which is the secret to building a basic waterfall chart using a column chart, which if you want to learn how to build this, just look for the links in the description box below. So because they're so complicated, formatting them, if you're right-clicking and trying to work your way through the right-click menus, can take you a lot of time. So a fast way to fast-track that is to either double-click the chart element you want to format, which works most of the time. So if I double-click the X-axis, notice I get the Format Axes dialog box with all of my X-axis options, but that sometimes doesn't work. But what does work all the time is Control-1. So if you select an item in your chart, either in PowerPoint, Excel, or Word, if you hit Control-1 on your keyboard, you're automatically going to open the dialog box to all of the formatting options for whatever you have selected. And don't forget, a lot of people forget this, you have this little drop down which allows you to kind of cycle through the different elements of your chart without having to select them with your mouse. So this should always open the format option dialog box to what you've selected, but if it ever fails you, simply select the thing you want to format. Control-1 on your keyboard will open up the formatting options dialog box for that element, which will save you a ton of time when charting in PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. Top shortcut number 20, the Notes pane shortcut. The Notes pane shortcut is Control-Shift-H, which is going to open and or close your Notes pane down at the bottom of your screen. And here's the way to use it to save a bunch of time. So Control-Shift-H is going to open up your Notes pane, and the key here is you can adjust this to any level you want to see your notes at. So if you want to open up your notes all the way, Control-Shift-H will close it. Control-Shift-H again will open it up so that you can actually study your notes and a little thumbnail image. Again, you can adjust this any way you want of your slide. Now, a couple quick points here in your notes. You can bold, you can change the colors of things. You won't see it here, but you will when you print. You can control spin wheel to zoom in or just zoom out to see your notes at whatever level you want. And the key here is you can now page down, all right? You can practice your presentation, seeing a thumbnail image of what you want to do or what you're working on. Control-Shift-H will close it out. You can make your adjustments. You can change something. Control-Shift-H will open up your notes again that you can edit any way you want. Now, the other reason that you want to use your notes is if you're using presenter view. So Alt-Shift-F5 will give you the presenter view of your presentation. All right, what your audience will see on screen, what's coming up next, and obviously here are your notes. And a little keyboard shortcut here, if you hold the Control key in the down or up arrow key, you can scroll through your notes. So notes are useful here if you use the presenter view. They're also useful if you want to hit Control-P to print and share your slides and notes with your audience. And you can check out my other video here on YouTube for the best ways to do that with a few sneaky recommendations. Top shortcut number 21, the Create Section shortcut, which can be super useful when printing your slides. So the Create Section shortcut, Control-Left-Caret, is useful for organizing your presentations on the fly, rearranging your presentations quickly, and printing the specific sections fast. So for example, let's say that this is my slide deck, and I'm responsible for slides 1 through 5, and Dan is responsible for everything else. So I can just hit Control-Left-Caret to create a section for Dan. I'll just rename it Dan, hit Enter, and you can see Dan's section right here that I can collapse and expand. Now note that whenever you create your first section, anything above the first section will become the default section. I'll right-click that, and I'm going to rename this to Taylor. So now I've split this deck between myself and my colleague that I can now expand or collapse and or click and drag to rearrange. So maybe Dan's section wants to come before my section. All right, you can do this here in the normal view. You can also, if you click the slide sorter view, all right, you're also going to see these sections also carry over there. So this is a fast way. All right, I'll just click and put Dan's section above mine again to rearrange and manage your presentations on the fly. The other cool thing about this is, let's say I want to just print my section of slides. Well, with the section shortcut, so Control-Left-Caret, if you hit Control-P to print, if you come to print all slides, notice that as soon as you create sections like this, you also get these little section headers allowing you to additionally save time by just printing a specific section of slides that you want to work on review. Top shortcut number 22, the Move Slide shortcut. Another common thing you'll do is you'll build and edit your slides is move your slides around within your presentation, which you can save a bunch of time with using the Control-Up and Control-Down arrow key shortcuts. So if you select a slide from the thumbnail view, Control-Up arrow will move a slide up, Control-Down arrow will move a slide down, quickly allowing you to find the best or optimal place for your content. And besides working with a single slide, if you hold Shift and select a group of slides, you can also Control-Down arrow key or Control-Up arrow key, move that little small section of slides somewhere different within your presentation. And now that you know the section shortcut, so Control-Left-Caret, this is Taylor's section. If I scroll down, let's say this is Control left caret Dan's section, you can also select a section and Control up or Control down arrow key to quickly move a section of slides somewhere else within your presentation, saving you a ton of time from otherwise having to manually reorder your content slide by slide. Top shortcut number 23, the insert equation shortcut for quickly getting at your PowerPoint symbols. The fastest way to insert your symbols in PowerPoint is using the Alt plus equal sign insert equation shortcut. But notice here that the sales percent delta up top doesn't match the sales percent delta down below. So this is a shortcut within a shortcut that not only do you want to use the Alt plus equal sign to insert your symbols, but you want to use it a second time so that you can reconvert your symbols back to the correct font style, in this case, Bodoni MT Black, so that all of your font styles stay consistent. So let me quickly demonstrate this. So sales, spacebar, I want to insert a symbol, so I'll hit Alt plus equal sign on my keyboard. We'll automatically open the Equation Tools Design tab. And here are my basic math symbols. So the first little tip here is to open up your symbols and select whatever symbols you use the most. So let's say, for example, I always use the arrows. I will select arrows, which means that every time I now use this shortcut, I'll hit delete, spacebar, Alt equal sign, it will automatically open up to all of my different arrow options. So let's say I want to say this is sales going up. I will select sales going up, and right off the bat, notice if I come to the home tab, that is in Cambrian Math. So your equation tools symbols will always come in Cambrian Math, which is why they'll never match your font style. So what you need to do is simply select the symbol that comes out, hit the Alt plus equal sign a second time, which will default your symbol back to whatever your default font styles are for your template. In this case, it's Calibrate Headings, but for this slide, I'm using Bodoni. So I will just type that, hit enter, and if I shift F5, notice the slight difference. This is Cambrian Math up top. This is that Bodoni MT Black down below. Same thing here on the left. This is percent delta in Cambrian Math. This is percent delta in Bodoni MD Black. So just make sure that as you're using this Alt plus equal sign keyboard shortcut, that you're using it ×2, and then to the extent that you're using a different font than the font style set in your template, that you're actually manually changing that font style so all of your slides stay sharp, clean, and consistent. Top shortcut number 24, the date and footer shortcut, which is a cool double dipper keyboard shortcut here in PowerPoint. So Alt-Shift-D is a double dipper keyboard shortcut allowing you to get your header footer dialog box or your date and time dialog box depending on what you're doing. So if you're on a slide and you're not clicked into anything, so I'm not clicked into a shape, text box, or anything like that, Alt-Shift-D will automatically open up your header and footer dialog box, which is the secret to getting at your slide numbers, footers, and date and time. And just as a quick heads up, just because you add a slide number properly to your slide master does not mean, I'll click Apply to All, that it automatically will show up here in the normal view of your presentation, which is again why you'll probably be going Alt-Shift-D a lot, depending on whose slide deck you're working with and how they have it set up. And if you need help with your slide numbers and getting them to show up properly or removing them, check out my other video here on YouTube. So that's the first place where Alt-Shift-D will save you a ton of time. The second place it'll save you a ton of time is if you actually click into an object. Let's say this is a shortcuts internal training that I perform once a week. Instead of trying to type the date here, I can hit Alt-Shift-D to open up the date and time dialog box, which not only gives you a bunch of different formats for inserting your date. Let's say I want Saturday, September 15, 2018. You can also select to update that date automatically. This will insert a date that will update every time you open this presentation based on, and this is super important, based on your computer's date and time setting. So if your computer's date and time setting is off, this date and time setting will be off. But assuming that I've now inserted this to update automatically, the next Saturday that I hold this training and open this deck, this will show up as September 22nd automatically, saving me a ton of time from having to edit my slide each and every time I give this presentation. Top shortcut number 25, the alignment tool shortcut, which is the $1 million PowerPoint shortcut and the one you'll use the most as soon as you have this set up properly. So the single most important or $1 million keyboard shortcut in PowerPoint is Alt 1 plus the direction. I first off want you to notice that these are commas, these are not plus signs, so this keyboard shortcut does not require you to hold the keys down. And what we're gonna do, this takes a couple of seconds to set up once, is set up the alignment tool in the first position of our QAT, which is gonna turn all of our alignment options into hotkeys, which will save you so much time in PowerPoint, it's ridiculous. You first have to set it up, so let's do that. So here in PowerPoint, just follow along and trust me on this. From the Home tab, navigate over to the Arrange tool dropdown and right-click the alignment tool at the group level. You can watch this video again if this doesn't make sense. And you're going to see that the alignment tool is added here to your QAT, and your QAT might be up top. The next step is you want to click the downward facing arrow. You do this once and you can use it forever. More commands. Come and find the Align Objects tool and just click it all the way to the top. I don't care what you have here on your QAT. You want to click it all the way to the top and click OK. And what that now has allowed you to do, if I come to slide number 2, where I have a slide where all the alignments are pretty messed up is, all right, I'll hit and let go of the Alt key. I don't need to hold it down. Notice there's a 1 key there. I'll hit 1 on my keyboard, and then I have all of the different alignment directions set as hotkeys on my keyboard. So I can go Alt-1, T for top. I can Alt-1, H for distribute horizontally, and all of my objects distribute horizontally on my slide. I can knock this one to the right, Alt-1, R for right. I can select these. Let me see, I'll just Alt-1, B for bottom. All right, now this is using the concept of relative alignment and positioning to align your objects. Alt-1, H for distribute horizontally, all right? Moving things from the anchor shapes, the left and right. This one, I think I have, I'll control spin wheel out. Alt-1, B for bottom. I'm gonna set this one, Alt-1, L for left, Alt-1, C for center. You can see how fast it starts to go. These ones I can Alt-1, H for distribute horizontally. And on top of that, if you go back to the grouping shortcut, so Control G to group, Control G to group, all right, Control G to group, you also have this other cool feature here, which, if I just kind of move these in, let's say these are all not aligned properly. If I select an object, Alt-1, notice you have Align to Slide and Align to Selected Object. If you select Align to Slide and you select a group of objects, you can Alt-1, H for distribute horizontally, and all of those objects will push across your slide in perfect formation. Just make sure that you Alt-1 move back to selected objects, because as of right now, if I do an Alt-1, T for top, those are going to pop to the top of my screen, which is probably not what I want. So those are the top 25 keyboard shortcuts that will save you the most time in PowerPoint, which is the fastest way I know of to double your productivity within the program. And if you missed one of those shortcuts or want to grab the PDF cheat sheets, just look for the additional resources directly beneath this YouTube video. This is Taylor from Nuts and Bolts Speed Training, and I'll see you at Happy Hour.